Welcome to the Explainer. You know, we all want progress. We all want things to get better. But what does better actually mean? Today, we're going to dig into one of the most powerful and, honestly, one of the most complicated ideas out there: development. So before we really jump in, just take a second. What does progress mean to you? Is it about more money, more freedom, a healthier planet? That desire to improve things, that's universal. But as we're about to see, what looks like a huge step forward for one person can look very, very different to someone else.
All right, so the very first thing we have to get our heads around is that development is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. In fact, sometimes one person's idea of progress is another person's biggest problem.
I mean, just look at this. The goals here are worlds apart. A landless laborer just wants more work and better pay. But a prosperous farmer? They want cheap labor. That's a direct conflict right there. A wealthy urban girl wants the same freedom her brother gets. And for an Adivasi living in the Narmada Valley, a massive new dam isn't progress. It's the destruction of their home.
So this makes it pretty clear that development goals don't just differ. They can actively clash with each other. And you know what? It's not always about money. Things we can't really measure, like freedom, security, being treated with respect, those are just as crucial to our well-being.
Okay, so if everyone's goals are so different, how in the world do we compare entire countries? Well, usually we fall back on the simplest and maybe the most misleading measure there is: money.
The standard tool used by big institutions like the World Bank is something called per capita income. It sounds straightforward, right? You just take a country's total income, divide it by the number of people, and bam, you've got an average. Simple enough.
And using this single number, the World Bank sorts countries into different buckets. You've got your rich countries, your low-income countries, and so on. India, for instance, lands right in the low-middle income category based on its per capita income. But here's the million-dollar question. Does an average income really tell us the whole story? As you're about to see, averages can hide some pretty dramatic realities.
So let's do a little thought experiment. Check this out. Country A and country B have the exact same average income. But just look at the numbers for a second. Would you really be equally happy living in both places? I don't think so. Country A is pretty equal, but in country B, wow. Almost everyone is dirt poor, while one person is fantastically wealthy. The average is identical, but the day-to-day reality for people could not be more different. And this, right here, is the biggest flaw of using just income. It makes inequality completely invisible. Okay, so let's see how this whole thing plays out in the real world. We've got a surprising comparison from right here in India that shows exactly why money is in everything.
Now, if we only look at per capita income, the state of Haryana seems way more developed than Kerala, right? On average, a person there earns quite a bit more.
But watch what happens when we look at a totally different number. Infant mortality. That's the rate at which babies die before their first birthday. Suddenly, the story completely flips. Even with more money, Haryana's rate is nearly 5 times higher than Kerala's.
And this really gets to a simple truth, doesn't it? A higher income doesn't automatically equal a better life. Think about it. The money in your pocket can't buy you a pollution-free environment or protect your whole community from a disease.
So how does Kerala pull this off?
Well, by investing in things that people share, things like strong public health systems and good schools that benefit everyone. These collective services are often way more effective and more affordable than anything an individual can buy for themselves. So, if income alone is such a flawed way to measure things, is there a better way? Well, yes, there is. Let's take a look at a much more holistic approach to what progress really means. So the UN has this thing called the Human Development Index, or HDI, and it gives us a much richer picture. It starts with income, sure, but then it adds 2 other absolutely essential pillars: health, which is measured by how long people live, and education, measured by how many years people actually go to school. And when you use the HDI, wow, the picture changes dramatically. Just look at how Sri Lanka, which is a much smaller economy, ranks so far ahead of India. And what's even more striking is that Bangladesh has a lower income than India, but its people live significantly longer lives. See, that word human is the key.
The HDI makes this incredibly powerful statement. The real measure of a country's development isn't just the size of its economy, it's the health, the education, and the well-being of its people. But, even a great metric like the HDI is still missing one critical final question. Can our progress actually last? This quote just puts it perfectly. Is the way we're living now sustainable, or are we basically just borrowing from the future? For decades, scientists have been sounding the alarm on this. And the warning signs are everywhere. We're draining renewable resources, like groundwater, way faster than they can naturally recover. And at the same time, we're burning through non-renewable resources, like crude oil, the very fuel of our modern world, at a pace we just can't keep up. The numbers are pretty stark. At the rate we're going, the world's known oil reserves could be gone in less than 50 years. And for huge consumers like the US, that window is even smaller. We're talking barely a decade. And this leaves us with what might be the most important question of all. What good is development if it isn't sustainable? The debate is far from over, but one thing is absolutely clear. The future of progress depends on finding a better answer.